This is TWiT.
You know, I'm not sure why exactly all of a sudden last weekend, the happy birthday lawsuit story against Warner Chappell that was filed about a year ago. It's about the birthday of the happy birthday lawsuit. Maybe that's why it's being talked about again. It is still wending its way through the courts. Not much has happened there, but people were sharing the link to the original filing of the suit as though it had just been filed. That's not the case. It's about a year old at this point. But it's a very fascinating case, and it deserves looking at afresh a year down the road. What is happening here is that Warner Chappell, who claims to have the exclusive copyright to the song Happy Birthday to You, is being sued on a number of theories, most of which revolve around the fact that Warner Chappell never had the copyright to the song to begin with, that it was in the public domain from way, way back. So this suit is still pending, and not much is going on with it right now. It's still in the discovery phase. It is now on its fourth amended complaint, which has been answered. And the most interesting thing that is set to happen in the suit is in November, the parties have their deadline filing motions for summary judgment. So we should see some substantive arguments there and see the parties put their cards on the table and be able to make some armchair quarterback predictions perhaps about where the case will go. So, Jack, have you been paying attention to this? And do you think it's as interesting as I do?
I think it's fascinating. You know, there's so many different things you can think about when it comes to the policy of copyright policy, and also when it comes to this particular case and questions like this, right? So we just had a case, I think it was decided early this year or late last year. It was decided one of those about Sherlock Holmes. And the Sherlock Holmes estate had been asserting copyright over really more than it owned, because a lot of the key early Sherlock Holmes material is already in the public domain. And because he did a lot of stuff before 1923, and then he did some stuff after 1923. And for public domain, that's a key date. And the Sherlock Holmes estate was not going to roll over and say, okay, well, we'll just give back we'll just let people use it now, or we'll just give back all these royalties or whatever. They fought tooth and nail, and in the trial court they lost, and they're going to lose up above, because I think it's a pretty clear-cut case. I think it's also pretty clear-cut. I think it's clear-cut, and I think the prediction's easy to make that Warner Chappell's ultimately going to lose for a couple of different reasons. The first reason is because there are some really good arguments about how the copyright was originally obtained and maintained over the 75 plus years, or 100 years almost, whatever it is, over the decades between now and when the song was originally allegedly put together in the teens. We went through many different changes to the copyright law, including in 1976, a huge, massive change, but many little changes throughout there in different periods where we had to re-register and stuff like that. And you can get into the nitty-gritty on, I think, one of the links that you posted, Denise. So I think that that's one of those is probably going to win. But I think there's a bigger reason why, which is that a lot of litigation, and copyright litigation is no different, fair use litigation is particularly like this, but a lot of litigation is really about the story you tell. And it's about what's going on in the society, or what's going on in a case, or whatever it may be. And I think that's there's so much outrage and discomfort with the length of copyright terms. And in this case, this is also something that has become part of our culture that we all feel ownership over. You know, happy birthday, it's almost like the Star Spangled Banner, which of course is in the public domain for a long time. But there are many songs like that. But, you know, when you talk about sampling, when you talk about referencing, you know, look at Reddit, and look at all the ways that people use memes, and they use Spider-Man, or they use the guy with the Louis Vuitton hat, what's it, Bad Guy Steve, or whatever he's called. You know, they use these pictures as words, as pieces of language, as tropes. And happy birthday is a part of basically every American's life since they were a tiny child all the way up until now. So the idea that that would still be under copyright doesn't sit right with people, both because it's part of our culture, but also because it's just so old, right? And so I think that that seeps into litigation. That seeps, that seeps into to the ether of the case, if you will. And I think that's one of the reasons that that it's not that hard to predict that ultimately Warner Chappell will lose. That might be 10 years from now, by the time it's completely finished, or 5, because I guarantee you they will fight this tooth and nail, particularly because it's not just saying going forward we want a declaratory judgment. In this case, they're saying this is a class action and we want you to compensate everyone since 2009 who has licensed this from you, right? And so not only would they have to pay out, but they would lose out on not only would they lose out on future revenues, but they would have to pay out. So I predict they'll fight it. I don't think they're going to settle. They would also be very embarrassing and would call questions into Warner Chappell's other behavior. Well, what else are they asserting copyright over that they might actually own, and so on. So I think it doesn't look good for Warner Chappell, but it's going to be quite a while before people that want to put Happy Birthday into a fictional film, a narrative film, are going to be able to do that without getting a letter from Warner Chappell.
Right. Virgil in IRC is suggesting people use the Beatles' birthday song, but then you've got the whole raft of copyright issues and licensing issues around that. So not so much a good alternative. Franklin, you have any thoughts or suggestions?
Yeah, I would agree. I thought Jack brought up a great point that this is a great way to get people to talk about the current length of copyright. I mean, what a better example than Happy Birthday for people to get upset about the current length and term of copyright, especially when there possibly might be reform going on or efforts to reform the current Copyright Act as it is. And so I think it's a great starting point to get people to discuss issues that are in copyright. But I think Jack just did a great job explaining the whole court case and the outcomes that are potentially available. So I think it's going to be interesting to see. And I also agree with the fact that Warner Chappell can't necessarily go back and just say, oops, we made a mistake, we don't have the copyright in this, because I understand why they're still fighting it, because they have a company image they have to protect, and who else is going to call into question any other rights they might have underneath their record label or the group of record labels they have.
So a scholarly article that really unpacks all of the copyright ramifications here is highlighted. There's a great blog post done at Many Fighting Faiths, which appears to be by a law student who had the professor who's being cited so repeatedly in the lawsuit. I'm going to butcher his name. It's Robert Brauneis, maybe, if I'm getting that right. But I've gone ahead and put it with the rest of our discussion points at This Week in Law, delicious.com/thisweekinlaw/269 if you want to look at that in depth. It is available on the web and for your perusal.